viewer asked the contemporary Native American writer Sherman Alexie this: how do you talk to your kids about the Thanksgiving story? And this is what he said: you just tell them the truth of it, the long historical nature of it. They're quite aware of what happened to us, the genocide, and the way in which we survive, and the way in which my wife and I have survived our individual Indian autobiographies. I guess it's trash talking. Look, you tried to kill us all and you couldn't. We're still here, waving the turkey leg in the face of evil. We come this morning to be joyful in the midst of despair. We come to kindle a light in a dark season. We gather each week in part to remind ourselves that we can light our chalice over and over again. And that's why it's here and what it's for, connecting us to a larger faith unseen, to a power greater than ourselves, connecting us, a fellowship through time with all those who have come before and all those who will follow us. A fellowship not bound by geography, a fellowship that stands outside of time, always ready, waiting, in whatever moment of history and whatever place this flame finds us. Let us light our chalice. For our opening hymn this morning, we'll sing number 142, Let There Be Light, in your silver hymnal. Our accompaniment video today is from the UU Church of Terre Haute, and the song leader and simple accompaniment are designed to support you as you sing along. Please join me in the spirit of meditation. Chief Blackcuttle was born around 1803 to the Northern Cheyenne people in the Black Hills. By the middle of the 19th century, he was a prominent leader of the Southern Cheyenne. He led efforts to resist American settlements from Kansas and Colorado territories. He was a peacemaker who accepted treaties to protect his people. In 1868, he and his wife tried to escape the Battle of Wichita River. He was shot and killed by the troops of the 7th U.S. Cavalry. The massacres of the peaceful Cheyenne at Sand Creek, Colorado, was one of the most atrocious war crimes against Native Americans. Not far away from that part of our country, the Dakota Access Oil Pipeline carries oil that jeopardizes the water supply. and the sacred lands of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe who live there today. It is in operation illegally, still awaiting an environmental impact statement. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers plans to issue this statement in 2025, 8 years since it started operations. This piece is written by Native American writer Simon Ortiz from his work from Sand Creek in 1981. The land and black cattle took them in like lost children, and by 1876, land allotment and reservations and private property were established. They must have known. Surely they must have. Black cattle met them at the open door of the plains. He swept his hand all about them. The vista of the mountains was at his shoulder. The rivers run from the sky. Stone soothes every ache. Dirt feeds us. Spirit is nutrition. Like a soul, the land was open to them like a child's heart. There was no paradise, but it would have gently and willingly and longingly given them food and air and substance for every comfort, if they had only acknowledged even their smallest conceit.
Music.
Comfort me,
I'm not pushing you out. I'm Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Stay with me, stay with me, stay with me, oh my soul. Stay with me, stay with me, stay with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, oh my soul. Pray with me, pray with me, pray with me, oh my soul. Pray with me, pray with me, pray with me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
In 2016, back 8 years ago, the Oxford Dictionaries named post-truth as the word of the year. Comedian Larry Wilmore said, "They're moving all the copies of the Constitution to the fiction section." 8 years ago, post-truth was that word and a neologism at the time, and unfortunately now, it's no longer new. And while we had a new word for it then, it's an old human pattern. Deception always looks for new disguises, sometimes through how we tell old stories. When most of us think of Thanksgiving, we think of the pilgrims and the Indians sharing a meal. From the perspective of the myth of our country, the pilgrims arrived in 1620. There were about 100 colonists on the Mayflower. 100 religious extremists. They were crazy. And I say that with a loving heart. They were so extreme fundamentalists as to be kicked out of England. And they stayed on a deck measuring about 50 feet by 25 feet with a 5-foot overhead. So our story starts there. And it suggests that the Native Americans started here at the same time. The native people of this continent have been here for 20,000 years. And our particular history forgot to tell us that. The familiar oil paintings of the first Thanksgiving shows English men and women in their finery, serving noble savages who were seated on the ground with the dogs and small children. The writers of the American founding myth forgot to tell us that the Iroquois had the first representative democracy. The indigenous people in the Western Hemisphere developed oral contraceptives in the 1800s, bunk beds before IKEA, hypodermic needles, chocolate and vanilla, parkas, anesthesia, aspirin, and the wheel. The wheel, really. And we white folks have been trying to reinvent it ever since. That winter of 1620 was hard. Nearly half of the colonists died. At times, there were only 6 to 7 healthy people to take care of the rest. If it weren't for the radical hospitality of the native Wampanoag people, the Puritan separatists might not have survived at all. But the following spring, the survivors planted seeds, cared for the crops under the teachings of a Wampanoag man named Squantum. He taught them how to grow corn and to use fish to fertilize their fields. They celebrated the harvest that next fall. Now, this story also forgets to mention that Squantum had already been sold into slavery 3 years prior, found his way back to his homeland to find a neighboring tribe had been decimated. This didn't start in 1620. There were Europeans who arrived a few years earlier. They brought diseases that decimated the native populations. When the Pilgrims found Plymouth Plantation, they did so amid the ruins of the Patuxet people. Human bones were littered on the ground because there had been no one left to bury the dead. Like 8 years ago, once again, in the wake of the election 2 weeks ago, the anti-immigrant rhetoric is being turned into concrete plans. And this time, these plans still include that concrete wall, but closing the US-Mexican border, wall or no wall, and launching the, quote, largest domestic deportation operation in American history, which, if carried out, would cost at least $315 billion. Every generation has had its own ugly reaction to refugees, to immigrants, whether they're the Irish, the Jews, the Vietnamese, the Cubans, or the Haitians. And those fears have been broadly unfounded. In fact, there was only one time in American history when the fear of almost wiping out every refugee did actually come true, and we'll be sitting around a table celebrating it on Thursday. That's from comedian John Oliver. As an antidote to untruth, the United American Indians of New England designated Thanksgiving as a national day of mourning in 1970. This kind of activism helps us move away from the untruth of the myth of Thanksgiving to understand the devastation of colonialism and cultivate respect and appreciation for Native cultures. And we have a role in this. Many of our churches were established by the Pilgrims, technically the Puritan separatists, and early colonists in New England. Those became most of them Unitarian Universalist churches. The first parish church in Plymouth, Massachusetts is the very one founded by the Pilgrims in 1620, is Unitarian. At our General Assembly in June 2016, the UUA passed a resolution to raise awareness about Thanksgiving. Untruth, the Thanksgiving myth, tells us a glowing story of the valor of the white settlers. But the difficult truth is that our government committed attempted genocide of 100 million people over hundreds of years. At least Germany admits their Holocaust. At that General Assembly 8 years ago, which is comprised of congregational leaders and ministers, our fellow Unitarian Universalists voted that we must educate ourselves and acknowledge our history. Justice requires repair. Repair requires truth-telling. And truth-telling requires learning, educating ourselves and one another. We don't have to end feasting and lovely family gatherings. There is a long history and cultures around the world to celebrate the harvest. In fact, in 1620, the English colonists were in part celebrating a traditional feast called Harvest Home. But we do need to turn to learn from history before we are doomed to repeat it, whether from 404 years ago or 8 years ago. Devaluing the safety and lives of Indigenous people continues today. The Dakota Access Pipeline construction was completed in 2017. The final paperwork was supposed to be finished in 2024, and here we are. It is a 12 to 30-inch underground pipeline that extends 1,172 miles underground to transport crude oil from North Dakota through South Dakota and Iowa and into Illinois. It's estimated that there is 7.4 billion barrels of undiscovered oil on one end of this pipeline. It shuttles 470,000 barrels, that's about 500,000 of crude oil in a day, which is enough to make 374 million gallons of gasoline per day. The pipeline has been designed to run through Bismarck, North Dakota, but there was concerns that it could contaminate the water supply, and you all may remember this 8 years ago. So the pipeline was then rerouted to native land. It was unacceptable that a 94% white city of Bismarck could harbor that risk. But somehow it is acceptable to force that risk upon the Standing Rock Sioux people, even when it is explicitly in violation of a treaty from 1851. That is environmental racism, pure and simple. It's not just about the water. The Standing Rock Sioux tribe sued the Army Corps of Engineers over the pipeline in 2016. And those protests that you might remember blocked and slowed construction, at least for that moment. But take another step back, there's only one reason there is a Lake Oahe. It's because the same Army Corps of Engineers built the Oahe Dam in 1962. And to do that, they took 150,000 acres from the Cheyenne River Indian Reservation and 55,993 acres from the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. They submerged towns. The dam took the best farmland. It took the medicinal plants. It is said that a visitor came to the reservation and she asked, "Why are there so few older Indians on the reservations?" She was told the old people had died of heartache after the construction of the dam. And that's not a story most of us have heard, if we've heard it at all. The Standing Rock Sioux tribe and their allies held steadfast, protesting an energy giant hell-bent on destroying their land for gain. Their largely peaceful protests were met with militarized police presence, pepper spray, and rubber bullets to disperse a people from a land that the same government had already promised was theirs. Natives were being arrested and thrown in jail for driving, even without a pretense of a broken taillight. They were humiliated and thrown to the ground on the very burial grounds of their families. And now we hear the incoming president wants to use the US military, not just militarized police presence, but the US military for mass deportations. No longer need there be any pretense of arrest if caught while driving brown. In the great American tradition of post-truth, Trump has pledged again to dismantle the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, calls climate change a hoax, emphatically proclaims drill, baby, drill, and to terminate the Green New Deal, unquote, which actually never passed nor got to happen, which he calls the Green New Scam. We've got stories here, and they have power, whether or not they are true. Short-sighted stories profit people over the planet. It's not about the impact upon the seventh generation that sustained and stewarded this land for 20,000 years. It is the stories, untruth with bits of truth woven in conveniently to make it believable, of colonialism, of the writers of history, that started by stealing from the native graves in Plymouth in 1620, to stealing the water and the land of the Standing Sioux, and to now call for a mass deportation of 13 million people from a land that we, as white people, those of us who identify that way, stole. Post-truth may be the watchword, but cameras and social media made 2016 different from 1620. Now, will we make 2024 different from 2016? So many of us are tired. Will we keep watching, listening? Our task as religious people, as justice-seeking people, is to look unflinchingly at injustices past and present while we cultivate gratitude. It is easy to be thankful when history is beautiful, when we are the victors. It is much harder to be thankful in the face of adversity, when we realize our own complicity in the stories, to harbor hope in a time of darkness. But the doctor doesn't come for the well, the doctor comes for the sick. People of color have had to do this for a long time. Native people have held a powerful vision of damnation and resistance, which is nevertheless understanding and even hopeful. Now we must do the same. If you find yourself in despair from this election season, I ask you, what if you may have been made for such a time as this? As a larger UU community, we are grieving what our country has been and what it might become. Yet if we turn our gaze, we see people at every corner who are not willing to secede their ideals to despair. The African-American poet Cornelius Eady said this: "Right now, uptown, there are people in a building trying to write a narrative about who we are, about who we're supposed to be and what to do about us. When you allow that narrative to be taken from you, bad things happen. We will not let anyone write our story." In the days, weeks, months, and years ahead, you're going to be writing and telling so many stories that we might just start to believe them. And so come to church. We come to church to remember our common story, to tell our individual stories, to myth bust, to truth tell, to cry, to lament, and to hope. And we do this week after week so we don't forget, so we can find our own words before they tell us what we should say. We come to love, to celebrate in the face of darkness, because joy is an act of resistance and thankfulness an antidote to despair. So go forth. Be joyful this week. Let there be light in your homes and feasting at your tables. Celebrate and eat your turkey leg. But let's join and wave that turkey leg in the face of evil. May it be so. Let us sing together hymn number 318, "We Would Be One." Let us send forth the flame with these closing words. Repair requires truth-telling. Cultural critic Bell Hooks said, "The heart of justice is truth-telling, seeing ourselves and the world the way it is, rather than the way we want it to be." That's seeing the world she's talking about, and ourselves, each of us, our communities, our faith tradition as Unitarian Universalists, the way it is, and the way we are. When we say, let us work for justice, this is part of what that means. May we be granted the courage, the compassion, and the commitment to make it so. I invite you, as you extinguish your chalice, to then join together, as is your custom, to sing, "From you I receive, and to you I give."
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.